opens by giving a psak in the discussion about saying Shema right before and after sunrise. It then goes on to explain the Mishnah line by line. Afterwards, it jumps into the halachos of eating the carbon Pesach. That brings a famous machlokas about that. And then it has some agadata about Yitzias Mitzrayim, and then we start a new Mishnah. The Mishnah brings us into the halachas of the morning Shema, and the Gemara will end off with a discussion of the inyan of being somech geula l'tefillah, discussing geula right before Shemona Esrei. Okay, the Gemara begins by weighing in on a halachic issue which was discussed in the Amud before, which is the subject of whether one can say Shema just before sunrise and just after sunrise, one right after the other. And the first time he says Shema, it'll be considered night Shema, and then right afterwards it'll be sunrise, and then he'll be able to say the day Shema. This was a shita of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. The Gemara says that Rabbi Zera said like Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the name of Rabbi Kiva, and Rabbi Zera added, but you shouldn't say Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu is a bracha usually said together with the evening Shema, but if you're saying it all the way at the end of the night, when people are beginning to get up, you can't say Hashkivenu, which is describing that people are going to sleep now. Then the Gemara says that Rabbi Shua ben Levi, who said this halacha, which Rabbi Zera added to, was not explicitly said. It was that there was an incident that happened that some chachamim were at a wedding of the son of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and they drank a little too much, they fell asleep, and they didn't manage to say Shema until just before sunrise, and Rabbi Shua ben Levi said they could be saimach on Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, famous line, Kedahi, Rabbi Shimon lismeichal b'shas hadchak, to paskin that they can say Shema now just before sunrise. Gemara now proceeds to discuss the next line in the Mishnah. The Mishnah had brought again three opinions as to what is the latest one can say Shema. The second opinion was that of the Chachamim, that is until midnight, Chatzos, and that of Rabban Gamliel, that is all the way until the morning. Then the Mishnah had brought a story that Rabban Gamliel's children asked him, can we still say Shema? It was very late after a wedding, and he said yes. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Rabban Gamliel's children did not know what his opinion was. They had to ask him. They hadn't heard this from him before. Surely they had. So the Gemara explains what they were asking was the following thing. We know that Rabban Gamliel, a father, you hold, you can say Shema until the morning. The question is, why do the Rabbanan say until Chatzos? Is it that they argue with you and they say that after Chatzos you can't say Shema anymore? The time is lost and we shouldn't? Or do they agree with you that the time really goes until the morning, but they hold that a person should try to say it before Shema? Midrabanan, you have to say it before Chatzos, before midnight, so that you don't accidentally miss the time. In that case, they would agree that in our situation, where we already missed midnight, that we should definitely say it before the morning. And on that, Rav Gamliel said, yes, that is exactly what the situation is. The Chachamim really agree with me. They just say you have to say it before midnight as a precaution. Explanation for why the Rabbanan said until Chatzos. Some more questions. Why would the author of the Mishnah add it in after Rabban Gamliel? He didn't hold that way. The Gemara explains, no, Rabban Gamliel was explaining that to his children, and that's why the Rabbanan disagreed with him and said until Chatzos. The Gemara now moves on to analyze the next phrase in the Mishnah. We had examples of other situations, other halachas, in which the Chachamim said that even though really the halacha is that you can do it until the morning, but you should do it by midnight. The examples that are brought were burning the parts of a carbon which needs to go on the Mizbeach. The Gemara asks, hold on a second, we missed one. We didn't mention eating carbon Pesach, which should also be done until the morning, and on that the Rabbanon should say that you should make sure to do it before midnight. Why don't we mention that? The Gemara says that I have a contradiction. I have a brisa which says clearly that you should make sure that you eat it until the morning. So our Mishnah seems to indicate that you can only eat the carbon Pesach until midnight, and that's not a D'Rabbanan thing. But I'll bring you a Mishnah which says clearly, it says the following thing. It says you can only eat carbon Pesach, or Daven Ma'ariv, or say Hallel on Pesach night, all the way up until the morning. So it's a contradiction. Is it that the time for eating carbon Pesach is at night until midnight or until the morning? So the Gemara says it's a machlekes tanaim. It's a machlekes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and this is our famous machlekes when we are at the Seder, whether or not one is allowed to eat afikaimin until midnight or until the morning. Anyway, Rabbi Akiva holds that one may eat until the morning, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds one may only eat until midnight. Now the Gemara will discuss what their argument is sourced in. So it's based around a pasuk that says the following thing: V'achlu es habasar b'layla hazeh. You should eat the meat of the carbon Balayla hazeh, on this night. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that those words Balayla hazeh are meant to link, as Gzeira Shava, to link to a different pasuk. V'avarti b'aretz Mitzrayim Balayla hazeh, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm going to pass through Mitzrayim on the night of Makas B'charos, Balayla hazeh, on this night. Just as his passing through was over by midnight, because all the firstborn were killed by midnight, so too in this pasuk, the phrase Balayla hazeh means till midnight, and after midnight you're not allowed to eat the carbon pesach anymore. That's his source. Rabbi Kiva's source is different. The pasuk says elsewhere, you should eat it in a rush. He understands that means you should eat it in a rush. At the time when you were about to rush, when were Klal Yisrael rushing? When they left Mitzrayim, they left in a rush. They ran out. But when was that? That was in the morning. That means that you can eat the carbon Pesach up until the time of rushing, up until the morning. So these are the sources of Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Gemara later will explain what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah does with the pasuk about the rushing. But now we go into his raya, which was that you have to eat it by midnight, because it says halayla hazeh, balayla hazeh, which is linked to elsewhere. So the Gemara says, what is Rabbi Kiva going to do with that? Well, Rabbi Kiva says balayla hazeh is meant for something else. Balayla hazeh is meant to tell me that it has to be eaten on this night and not the night before. Karbanas, you can eat the day that it was brought. I need the word Laila to tell me that you can't eat it the day it's brought, only once night falls. And I need the word Hazeh to tell me that you can't eat it the next night, because most Karbanas you could eat for 2 periods and the one in between. You could eat it for 2 days and the night in between. I might think that this carbon I can eat at 2 nights and the day in between, and therefore I should be able to eat it the second night of Pesach. Therefore it says Hazeh to tell me you can't eat it the second night either. According to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, both words are needed. Laila Hazeh, that's both part of the link to the other pasuk that says Laila Hazeh. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah does not like Rabbi Kiva's explanation that Laila is needed to say that you can't eat it during the day, and Hazeh is needed to say that you can't eat it the second night. He says, what do you mean? Why would I think you could eat it the second night? It says Ad HaBoker, you can only eat it until the morning. Rabbi Kiva says, okay, morning. Morning might mean the second morning. You could eat it the second night, but you can't. It has to be finished by the morning after that. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, no, there's no such thing. Until the morning never means until the second morning from now. It means until the coming morning. The Gemara now quotes another machlokas between 2 Tanaim. The Gemara says that this next machlokas lines up perfectly with the one between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The machlokas we're about to see is concerning the pasuk that says the following thing. When are you supposed to have the carbon Pesach? So it describes it as follows. Sham tisbach es ha-pesach ba'orev. You should have the Pesach in the afternoon when the sun is past the zenith. Kivaya shemesh, when the sun is setting. The time you left Mitzrayim, which was when Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim in the morning. So I have 3 different times listed within the same breath: afternoon, nightfall, and morning. What do we do with these 3 things? What do they refer to? So the Tanaim say it refers to 3 different steps of the service of the carbon Pesach, and it's Machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Both agree that afternoon is when you slaughter the carbon Pesach. Both agree that nightfall is when you eat the carbon Pesach. The question is, what does the morning have to do with anything? Rabbi Eliezer says, well, that's when you burn anything that's left over, because you can't eat it anymore. Already from concise, you aren't allowed to eat it anymore. Morning is for burning. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, morning is when you stop eating. So the Gemara lines up this machlokes. Rabbi Yeshua says mornings when you stop eating, holds like Rabbi Akiva, you could eat until the morning, and Rabbi Eliezer, who says mornings when you burn it, holds you have to stop eating by nightfall, which is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Gemara now returns to the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva about the phrase chipazon. It says you're supposed to eat the carbon Pesach in a rush. Rabbi Akiva learned the rush means the morning, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says the rush means the evening, at night. The Gemara explains the machlokes is about the following pasuk. It says, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim at night. And then elsewhere it says, Mimachras ha-pesach yotzu b'nei Yisrael biyad Ramah. Klal Yisrael left Egypt with a upraised hand in the morning. So, contradiction. Did they leave at night or did they leave in the morning? Well, the Gemara says everybody agrees that they were freed. Mitzrayim said go in the evening. That was when the enslavement was over and they were free to go, and they said we're not leaving till the morning, and in the morning they actually left. So the question is, when it says the time of rush, the chipazon, the time of rush is when we should eat the carbon, Which time of rush? In the evening, Mitzrayim was in a big rush. They said, get out of here, we want you out. That's Mitzrayim's rush. In the morning, Klal Yisrael was in a rush. They said, now we're leaving. It was always the last minute rush when you leave. So, Rabbi Akiva says, the rush means the morning. Klal Yisrael's rush. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, no, the rush, Chipazin, means the evening, when Mitzrayim was trying to rush them out. The Gemara then brings another Brisa, which has a similar idea. The Gemara asks, was it at night? But it says, Mimachras HaPesach was in the morning, to teach that the Gura started at night, and they didn't leave until the morning. Gemara now proceeds to analyze a few of the psukim describing Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, and the Gemara analyzes them the Sam Agarata. The Gemara says that when Hashem said to Moshe, tell Klal Yisrael to borrow things from the Mitzrayim, from the Egyptians before they leave, he said, Daber no, please. He was asking, he begged, please make sure that you tell them, please ask them to borrow things, because I told Avram Avinu that they're going to be slaves for 400 years, then they're going to leave with great wealth. What if they don't leave with the wealth? Avram will have a taina. He'll say, what do you mean? You enslaved them for 400 years, but where's the wealth? Gemara says that he said it to the Jews, and they responded, listen, just get us out of here. We just want out of here. Don't worry about the wealth. We're willing to give it up. Like somebody who's promised to be freed from jail and given great riches. He says, you know what? Forget the riches. Just get me out of here. The Pasuk says, Vayash Ilum, and they lent them everything. The Gemara says that means that it was against their will. The Gemara says it was against their will. It was against whose will that they lent everything? Rabbi Ami says against the will of the Mitzrayim, they didn't want to lend anything. And there are those that say against the will of Yisrael, Klal Yisrael didn't want to do it. They wouldn't want to borrow all these jewelry and riches. They didn't want to be weighed down in their flight away from Mitzrayim. The Pasuk says Vayanatzlu es Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was emptied out. What does the word Vayanatzlu mean? Rabbi Ami says Kimitzuda, Natzlu. You interchange the Lamed with a Dalid, and it's Kimitzuda, like a trap that did not have a bait in the trap. Rish Lakish says Kimetzula, like the bottom of the oceans that had no fish, emptied out of fish. Gemara now moves on to discuss twice where a word was repeated to emphasize something and give two meanings. Gemara says when HaKadosh Baruch Hu identified himself to Moshe Rabbeinu, he said his name is Ekia Asher Ekia, I will be what I will be, or when I will be. The Gemara says Hashem was saying, I will be with Klal Yisrael, with the Jews, in this problematic situation, and I will be with them in future problematic situations. Gemara says that Moshe said to Hashem, you can't tell them about future problems when they're struggling with this one. Hashem said, yes, you're right. I didn't say you should say that to them. I'm telling that to you. You just say, Ekeh shlachani aleichem. Just tell them that I'm with them with this problematic situation. Another similar time where you had the word repeated twice is when Eliyahu HaNavi stood at Har HaKarmel and he was trying to convince Klal Yisrael that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the real Hashem. And he had a contest with who was going to successfully bring a carbon and a fire will consume it. And he said, Aneni Hashem Aneni. Hashem, answer me, Hashem, answer me. What are the two Anenis? One, answer me that fire should come down from Shemayim and consume the carbon, and the other one is answer me that they shouldn't think that it's some kind of witchcraft. They should understand that it's really you. Now begins the next Mishnah, which discusses Kriya Shema in the morning, the earliest time and the latest time for saying it. What is the earliest time for saying Shema in the morning? The Gemara says, from when a person can tell the difference between white and blue strings. Rabbi Elazar says between blue and green strings or colors. What is the latest time? Sunrise is the first opinion, and Rabbi Yeshua says it's until 3 hours into the day after sunrise, because again the machlokes over here is when is it called the people are arising. Uvkumecha is when we're supposed to say it, when people are arising. The first opinion says people have all arisen by the time the sun is up, and the second one says, well, you always have the kings and the princes that are lazy and they don't get out of bed until 3 hours into the day. But by that time, everybody's up. Says the Mishnah, if you didn't say it by this time, you can still say it. You will not get the mitzvah of saying Kriya Shema, but you will get a mitzvah of learning Torah. The Gemara begins with a few opinions about when the earliest time for Shema is. The first opinion is between blue and white. We said the Gemara says, what do you mean? A huge mountain of blue wool compared to a huge mountain of white wool? Anybody could see that, even in the middle of the night. The Gemara says, no, it means different streaks within one mound of wool, blue and white. The Gemara says, Rabbi Meir says a different time, it's when you can tell the difference between a dog and a wolf. Rabbi Kiva says you can tell the difference between a wild donkey and a tame one. Some say, Acherim say it's when you can see your friend from 4 amos away and recognize who he is. The Gemara says halacha is like a Acherim. That's the opinion when you can see from 4 amos away. That is the time. Abaye says the halacha is as far as tefillin, the earliest time to put on tefillin is like a Acherim, but Shema should be said like Vasikin. What's Vasikin? They used to say Shema just before sunrise, and then they would say Shema Esrei right afterwards. Why'd they do that? They wanted to be able to say Shema in its time, which is before sunrise, Shema Esrei in its time, which is after sunrise, but they want them to be together, because you want to have Geula close to Tefillah. You want to have the bracha discussing Ga'al Yisrael, the redemption of Klal Yisrael, right before Shemona Esrei, and therefore you had to sandwich sunrise between the two. Rabbi Zeir says, I'll bring a right to that from a pasuk. It says, Yira'ucha im Shemesh, will fear you with the sun. Fear you refers to reciting Shema. Rabbi Yochanan ben Eliakim said that the holy congregations in Yerushalayim said that anybody who says Shema, says Geula close to Tefillah, will not have anything bad happen to him the entire day. Rabbi Zeir says, not true. I used to do that. At least once I did, and something bad happened to me that day. The Gemara says, bad happened to you? What bad happened to you? You had to bring expensive bouquet of hadassim to the king. Well, you know what? You should bring an expensive bouquet of hadassim to the king, because a person is supposed to give money to be able to see the king's face. As a matter of fact, Chazal say that a person should try to see a Jewish king's face, and he should also try to see a non-Jewish king's face, so that when a Mashiach will come and he'll see a Jewish king, he'll tell the difference. For it wasn't a bad thing that happened to him that he had to bring hadassim to the king. He had an opportunity, even if it cost him a bit, to see the king's face, and that's something you should be willing to spend money on. It's an incident. Rabbi Allah said to Ula, when you go to Eretz Yisrael, please ask about the welfare of Rav Bruna, my brother, in front of everybody, in order to give him honor, because he's a great man and he has a tremendous simcha, joy with doing a mitzvah. One time he was able to say Geula close to Tefillah, and he smiled the whole day just because of that one thing. Says Rabbi Yochanan asks, how is it possible to say Geula right next to Shemona Esrei? There's a pasuk preceding Shemona Esrei and a pasuk ending it. Just before Shemona Esrei we say the verse of Hashem Sefasai Tiftach Ufi Agid Tilasech, and just afterwards we say Yila Ratzin Emrei Fi. So you can't get Geula close to Tefillah. These psukim are in the way. So the Gemara says, first answer is that that's only by Shachris, but by Ma'ariv you could get Geula close to Tefillah. By Shachris you could get Geula close to Tefillah. By Ma'ariv you say the psukim before and after Shemona Esrei. Then the Gemara says that's not true. Rabbi Yochanan says you're supposed to say Geula close to Tefillah even by Ma'ariv. So the Gemara says no, by Mincha you could say the psukim, but by Shachris and by Ma'ariv you should have Geula close to Tefillah. Gemara offers another answer. Rav Ashi says no, the psukim are considered to be part of the process, and therefore they do not interfere. It's added on. It's like a long Shemona Esrei or like a long Geula. And the raya to that is that you have to say Hashkivenu by Ma'ariv. So that interferes between Gal Yisrael and Shemona Esrei. The Gemara says no, it's not, because it's how Chazal designed it. Therefore, it's not an interference. It's part of the bracha. Now discusses that which we say Yil Ratzin Imrei Fi Vehegen Libi Lefonecha at the end of Shemona Esrei. The Gemara says you could have said that at the beginning of Shemona Esrei. You're trying to tell Hashem to listen to my tefillah that I'm about to say. Why do we say it at the end? It says because it appears at the end of the 18th chapter of Tehillim. So therefore we say it after the 18 brachos of Shemona Esrei. The Gemara says on the side. It's not at the end of the 18th chapter. It's at the end of the 19th chapter. The Gemara says no, because what we really do is we combine chapter 1 and chapter 2 into one. They both start with Ashrei Yo'ish, and they're really one long chapter, and therefore altogether there are only 18. Another proof to that idea that you combine chapter 1 and chapter 2, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi said that you don't find the word Hallelujah until after 103 chapters. The Gemara says count them. It appears after 104. You combine 1 and 2, so it's 103. Where do we have the word Hallelujah first appear? When the author of Tehillim saw the downfall of the Rishayim, that was where he said, Yitam Chatayim and Aretz Risham Oid Einam Baruch Nafshis Hashem Hallelujah. Proof that chapter 1 and chapter 2 are meant to be combined. Says Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, name of Rabbi Yochanan, any chapter that David HaMelech had a special affinity for, he started with Ashrei and he ended with Ashrei. The first chapter in Tehillim starts with Ashrei and it ends with Ashrei. The Gemara points out it doesn't. The second chapter ends with Ashrei. The first one starts with Ashrei and the second one ends with Ashrei. Because chapter 1 and chapter 2 are supposed to be combined, and therefore it's really one chapter that starts with Ashrei and ends with Ashrei. Practically speaking, we do not combine the first chapter and the second one. We keep them separately, and that's because the Balei Misora, who lived in Tveria, their tradition is different than the Gemara, and it's brought down in many Chuvas Forum that halacha l'may, so we always go with the Balei Misora, even when they are against the Gemara, and that's why we keep the two parshas of the first two chapters of Tehillim separate.